Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I'm the Grace Strega, and I'm here to give you your daily collective read for today, Wednesday, May 8th, 2024. What do we have coming through in the cards for today? May I please have the first 5 cards in our 5-card spread? First card we are starting our day off with today is 5 of Swords, and it's in its upright. Listen, I'm not surprised to see this. We've got a lot of this energy that was coming up, right? A lot of that feeling of navigating or dealing with circumstances and situations. But one of the things that we see that is really valuable and important right now has to do with a lot of these breakthroughs that those are having right now in relationality to identifying and articulating what you feel like you're changing in the present. What happens when we make changes in the present? What happens when we have breakthroughs? It requires us to have that ability to look back, because the perception of the present continually recontextualizes the experiences that we had in the past. This is how we see those moments that even as we move forward, if we're doing our work right, it almost creates that moment of always looking backwards, because that's that moment of recontextualizing that is the articulation point in the fact that we are learning, that we are growing, that we are changing. And so we see even now that there may be that moment of energetic contemplation coming into play right now. And a lot of it is due to the fact that we see that so much of these energies are experiencing and having a lot of breakthroughs in relationality to triggers, old wounds, sensitivities, right? Masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union right now. What we effectively see. What did we say was happening? The moment that you articulate or show someone an insecurity, instead of effectively like subjecting another to one's emotions, but almost being able to articulate on where those sensitivities are, that allows for that path work. And the minute one has that space, having that reconsideration point of something being energetically held with a sense of care, effort, and sensitivity, it immediately creates that moment that healing starts to happen. And it can be energetically painful, because healing can be a very painful process, because in the moment that one experiences something in a way that feels different, the minute someone is able to hold space for something that may have created a wound in the past with the gentleness that you may have aspired and desired it to be held in the past, that is the moment that you have to almost have look back on the past with that sense of new perspective. So we see even now that for a lot of the energy entering or coming into the divine union, this is your own perspective on the past, potentially energetically shifting at the time that you're entering the divine union frequency. Masculine and feminine energy right now in the heart of the divine union frequency, this has more to do with navigating one's own insecurities, one's own sensitivities. This hasn't been a moment of like holding firm and like just navigating forward with a wound that you may have felt like you brought into the divine union frequency. This is the energy that's built enough of that energetic trust within one another that it's allowing you to push past your own comfort zone, but not in the sake of doing that and facilitating that for the need of another, but almost for the need of the self. And that feeling of energetic support, that feeling of recognition, that feeling of not doing that in a point of solitude, that is almost what's amplifying a lot of that energy, being able to face things in a way that they haven't faced them before, because that is that feeling of energetic companionship in relationality to navigating forward in a way that like you're having that breakthrough point in terms of being able to not be energetically triggered in the way that one previously was, because you're doing this work on healing the self via the connection in the divine union frequency. While for masculine and feminine energy right now in separation, this is the energy that is building new energetic bridges right now, new energetic connections and possibilities via that sense of energetic perception on the past, right? Because what do we see that is happening right now for a lot of this energy and separation? A lot of those new energetic connections that are forming here, and that's either building a bridge with the past, looking and seeing if someone has the same perspective, has the same perception with you. It's not the fact that you guys had the same experiences prior to this point, but if you took the same lessons, if you came out of something with the same energetic lesson, that can be a validation point in feeling like you found someone that you're in energetic alignment with. So we see even now like that ability of sharing that perception on something is what's building upon a lot of these new experiences. Or if these are pathworks of reconciliation, a lot of that could be articulated in someone articulating and saying, I understand your perspective now. I see something in a different way. Something that I saw one way, I now see in a different way. And that's what's allowing that pathwork of new breakthroughs and understanding. Second card in our 5-card spread for today is, we've got here the Hermit. A lot of contemplation today. A lot of going inwards. Not a big, it's funny too, because over the weekend we saw that this card was in its reversal. There's a lot of that introspection today. I'm, again, not surprised to see this because we did see yesterday a lot of this energy of this Taurus new moon, if you will, is almost like channeling and putting a lot of like just wheel to the grind, like nose to the grindstone type of energy right now. A lot of energy just channeling, like working into that place or space of just putting a lot of that effort and energy into the tangible space. And in a way, what happens when we're putting a lot of that, it's like, I want to say this is giving a lot of that like idea or like that space of like the energetic wheels turning, like as you do work to a certain extent, right? That moment of, again, feeling that ability to introspect, feeling that ability of looking back towards the past, having that moment, because a lot of the energy right now is feeling like you had that energetic breakthrough, particularly during that eclipse cycle that we're just coming out of. And that heightened perspective, that new energetic perception, that is what's almost allowing you to look back and see the past with a new sense of clarity. So that's why we see even now across all of the channels, that ability to do so is what is it's either feeling for the energy in the divine union frequency, that moment of having an energetic breakthrough because you're looking at something in a different way, or that moment of experiencing building new energetic pathways with energy and separation, specifically due to the fact that you're building that sense of recognition in another by seeing whether someone has the same perspective as you, has the same point of view, took the same energetic lessons from past experiences. And that's what I mean about the fact that it's not that we have to go through the same things, but that we came into that state or space of learning the same energetic lessons. That can also be that moment of alignment. And what are these energies right now doing in separation? They're building upon the experiences of the past, talking not from a place of things that have effectively energetically happened to them, but almost their own accountability in those things and utilizing that to set the course going forward, right? This is energy that's almost amplifying to themselves as they meet or as they come into reconciliation. That sense of not being energetically perfect, but almost taking that valuation point and trying to make sure anything that did not go the way that one aspired and desired is almost like guiding the path going forward. That is literally the path of energetic mindfulness to a certain extent. Third card in our 5-card spread for today is, what do we got here? We've got here a Queen of Wands. So this is really lovely because we've got here again masculine and feminine energy right now in separation. What's really beautiful about this is, again, even with the feminine energy coming into those states or spaces wherein they may have felt like they were in that moment of energetic recovery, right? This is almost a lot of that feminine energy that was coming out of that cycle of potentially almost overly blaming oneself for what occurred, right? Taking too much of that introspection in, taking too much of that doubt. What did we see that a lot of the feminine energy in separation was doing? They were moving some of that outside of the emotional body. They were identifying, and that's not I need to stress this, that isn't the feminine energy, like projecting something outward that needs to be changed in the self. This is the feminine energy recognizing their own tendency of internalizing something that was external, right? That's where a lot of the path work is for feminine. So we see even now that this is feminine energy that is coming into that state or space of articulating that, even in the work of new energetic connections, right? This is feminine energy that's done that sorting process within their self, saying like, this is something that I experienced energetically. This is what I could have changed. This is something I experienced energetically. This is what I could have changed. This isn't the feminine energy that's putting all of the weight on the internal emotional body or on entirely everything that was externally happening at the time. This is the feminine energy that is building that sense of understanding in between like that action reaction moment to help amplify what they feel is within their own power to change versus what they had to energetically walk away from. While for masculine energy and separation, that same energetic work that is potentially happening right now. If this is masculine, that's either building new energetic connections with feminine from a place of honesty and clarity, openness, wanting to share that manifestation goal, wanting to build with someone instead of around someone. We see that this is masculine energy that's doing that moment of looking back on past experiences and circumstances and almost saying like, I recognize my own lessons. I recognize where I should have made those changes. I've gone into contemplation. I've done that work. And we see even now that a lot of that masculine energy, it's almost that like benchmark to almost say to the feminine. I see moments and opportunities where I didn't energetically trust the feminine enough. That my own anxiety of trying to come towards the feminine in a place of not necessarily trusting them may have created that moment where I may have energetically blocked my own blessings. So we see even now that for a lot of the masculine energy working through that moment, a lot of that work feels like that path work in terms of, again, I almost coming into that sense, and I want to say like there's a little bit of more of that trepidation that we see that is occurring for a lot of that masculine energy, building new energetic pathways with feminine, because that's that mindfulness or discernment that's being utilized in relationality to doing something that is energetically difficult. And a lot of that is almost saying the thing that you wouldn't typically say, that quiet part, like taking that quiet part of the self and putting it out loud. Both of these energies challenging one another, right? For masculine, it's almost like building that connective bridge with feminine and separation, saying, this is hard for me to talk about. I'm learning how to talk about these things. Feminine saying, it's hard for me to like stand in my power here. It's hard for me to be energetically resilient. It's hard for me to point at something outside of myself and say that that's something that occurred instead of something that I can change within myself. So we see even now that for a lot of this energy, that ability of challenging oneself, that's the same energetic breakthrough that we see that's occurring right now in the energy that's in the divine union. It's happening and it's building those bridges now in the energy that's in separation. This is a lot of new, and I like this. This is slow building. This is campfire energy. This is something that's like building up momentum or taking speed because there's a lot of contemplation and discernment and not wanting to repeat the past lessons. Masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union right now. This is that breakthrough point in immediately experiencing something. These energies, I need to stress this, these energies are not pushing on each other to change. They're not noticing an insecurity. They're not noticing a weakness and saying, you need to fix that right now, because these are energies that are being mindful. They're holding space for what occurred in the past, right? And that ability of holding space. What happens in the moment that you experience the ability of another to hold a wound for you? It's the moment you immediately feel and say to oneself, that might be something I can energetically release. Because that's almost that moment you look towards another and say, I'm having someone hold something. And even their expression of holding it is articulating the fact that they're not the source of the energetic wound. Their own ability of being mindful is almost like observing the fact that they're holding something for me that I don't necessarily need them to carry. And that's the moment that the gift of the other, the gift of the external self, creates that moment of internal healing, because that's that moment of saying, maybe I'm ready to energetically release that. So that's an internalized process that's happening right now for a lot of the energy coming into divine union. The energy in the heart of the divine union is just going ahead and doing that. They're pushing themselves. They're navigating. They're trying to come into their highest version of self. And that's that moment of saying, if I want to come into my highest version of self, I need to release the insecurities. I need to release the wounds of the past. And this energy is doing so in such a way that they don't feel like they are being like, they're not feeling like an energetically pushed in the direction by the counterpart, but they're seeing the counterpart that's moving in the same way. And that builds that sense of energetic excitement in doing that work, because it's almost that moment of feeling like you're challenging yourself, but in the best way possible. Fourth card in our 5-card spread for today is, this is that reconsideration point, because all of this energy navigating through a state or space that you may have felt previously you were energetically reactive, but it's not having the same effect on you. It gives you an ability to reconsider something in a different way. For masculine and feminine energy in the heart of the divine union frequency right now, this is that moment of potentially looking at the past. If you've navigated something here and you're not feeling as energetically triggered, if you push past your comfort zone and you're not feeling that same sense of like fear or anxiety or insecurity coming up, that moment of almost feeling like something has gotten energetically easier, that almost feels like in a way you're building into a point of strength that allows you to navigate towards something that you may feel is energetically unresolved. And for a lot of the energy right now in the divine union frequency, this may be things from like the way in the past, right? Because these are like, this was a lot of energetic impact, like unpacking to a certain extent. So we see even now that for a lot of that energy, this may be addressing like old wounds, past grievances, something that was like, far back in the past, because that perception point of who you are now and even pushing through your own insecurities is giving you that energetic confidence to be able to navigate and do something in a different way. While for masculine and feminine energy coming into the divine union frequency, this is that moment that feels like that beginning or start of reconsidering something that you feel might be more immediately healed. Something is almost immediately getting healed right now, even in a way of like not necessarily touching it. Because that ability of showing someone a vulnerability, showing someone an energetic weakness, and not feeling like that is something that is being energetically triggered, seeing someone else's own mindfulness to navigate through that immediately starts bringing that healing in, because that's that moment that almost feels like the amplification of saying, do I really need to energetically carry that? I'm seeing that there's not that need, if these are places or spaces that you have like, an insecurity or your guard up, and you're recognizing and realizing that there's just no need for that to be there. It's like almost that moment that like your shoulders start to fall back, because you're like, maybe that's something that I can change from within. So we see even now a lot of that energy is just experiencing that healing almost at the moment of coming into the divine union frequency. While for masculine and feminine in separation right now, this is a lot of new energetic connection that's potentially happening right now for masculine and feminine. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. For masculine, these are potentially pathworks that have led to a lot of introspection. This is potentially masculine, almost articulating on a lot of that like interior journey to the feminine, almost in a way that you might not necessarily have done before. While for feminine, this is feminine almost speaking towards themselves in a way of being more energetically protective of the past self than you may have experienced at the time of having experienced something. Both of these energies having this new way of being, if you will, that is allowing and facilitating and fostering new energetic connection points. And even in those moments, it's helping you look at something from the past in a different way, because these energies, if they're experiencing and encountering each other on the healing journey, it almost seems like you're helping one another. It doesn't feel so much like you're almost coming together right now from a place of like passion. It almost feels like you're immediately being able to give one another energetic support in the time of energetically connecting. Fifth card in our 5-card spread for today, before we get clarity on these cards, is we've got here, oh my gosh, this is like retrograde energy today. This is like, what is this? Why is this like, I need an astrologer to tell me why we've got all this like retrograde energy coming back up. Because we see here, this is a lot of that like making peace to a certain extent with things. But what's beautiful about whatever this feels, this is the affirmation. This is the affirmation of the work of the healing that occurred during the Mercury retrograde cycle. Because this is that moment. It's not the fact that the past isn't coming back in some way. We almost see a lot of this energy and separation finally feels the easement in talking about something that was energetically experienced. Like even in that moment of articulating on something that occurred and your new perception on it, like being something that's building that energetic bridge, there's almost that moment that almost allows it to suddenly feel like a moment of peace, right? Because that moment of articulating on it in this way is almost that moment that you recognize within the self that you've already made peace with something, right? Like that is a lot of energy, recognizing in the building of a new energetic connection with someone that the ability to do so and the ability to articulate on something with that change in perspective, the change in perspective was the energetic closure that was received for both masculine and feminine, a bit of a different take, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. This is the feminine energy almost saying to the masculine, I know what it is that I want. I want the energy that wants the same things that I want. That is why we see that take on the feminine's take right now in building the new energetic connections is being very, I want to say, being very energetically resilient in speaking towards what it is that they're hoping to manifest in the future, because that is how the feminine energy is healing any of that past karmic lesson. Right? I told you, what did a lot of the energy of the feminine in separation? What was the takeaway? I need to stay very focused on my path. I need to be very mindful when I feel like I'm moving off of my path. I'm trying to stay in alignment, and I want energy that feels like they're in alignment with me. So this is the feminine energy saying, I need to be as specific as possible as to what I want to ensure that there is that energetic alignment. Right? And for masculine, this is masculine saying, I need to be very energetically mindful of what it is that I aspire to. I need to recognize and identify that, again, if I want to move towards something with feminine, I need to be very energetically mindful of being able to articulate that hidden hope, be able to articulate that hidden dream, to be able to build forward on that pathwork. This is hard for the masculine, because this is the masculine feeling the vulnerability in revealing something. It almost feels like that secret wish or that secret desire, the manifestation that's held back. Right? And this is the masculine almost reminding themselves in those moments and saying, if I want something with the feminine, if I want to manifest something with the feminine, I must take that hidden wish or that hidden dream and that hidden possibility, and I must have the confidence to bring it forth to the feminine in order to make it a tangible reality. So we see both of these energies right now, if in separation, challenging one another, affirming and reminding themselves of the past experience where they may have felt like they didn't navigate forward in that same way. They didn't hold fast to that personal edict. And that is that moment that's almost like that affirmation on how one is going to change itself, that is immediately allowing there to be peace from the past experience, because it's almost observing the way that you're moving now that reminds you that you're not the person who you were. Right? And that in itself can create that sense of karmic closure, because you're seeing how something energetically changed you, but for the better. Masculine and feminine energy right now coming into divine union. That change in perspective being reached and facilitated by feeling the energy of being with the counterpart that truly holds space for how you need, not just what you feel, but not just for how you hurt, but how you want the places that you hurt to be held by the other. Masculine looking towards feminine at that time. And if this is feminine, that can identify the difference between how the feminine may want to navigate through something. Feminine's own ability to want to talk through difficulties or hurdles, but almost taking a little bit more of that hands-off approach, almost saying to masculine, I understand that that's not necessarily the same way that you do. When you're ready, know that I'm here. When you're ready, know that I'm here. Masculine having that moment of saying to the feminine, I know I didn't create that harm in you. I know I didn't create that insecurity, but I can carry it for you. I want to understand more. I want to understand more about that so that I make sure that I don't inadvertently cause something like that to occur again. Both of these energies building into that pathwork of catharsis. And the minute that they do so, they don't even have to do anything for one another. The minute they see that expression of compassion is the moment that they immediately start to build a change in perception, because it's that moment that immediately brings the past back, but not in the same way or form, that creates that new perception, that leaves that possibility of potentially being able to broach an insecurity, be able to broach a vulnerability in a way that you haven't before. The energy in the heart of the divine union frequency is proceeding forward in that way. And what happens in the moment that we navigate through something that we typically would avoid, that we typically would get triggered by, that we typically would have a reactive point to, that's immediately a moment we have to reconsider something. Because that is that moment that we can see something beyond the reactivity, beyond the sensitivity, right? So a lot of clarity coming for a lot of the energy right now in the heart of the divine union frequency. And even that moment, the inactivity, feels like the energetic breakthrough, right? Because that's that moment of saying, I'm not reacting the same way. It doesn't hurt anymore, right? Like that's the energetic breakthrough. Continuing to get clarity on these cards right now between our Five of Swords in combination with our Hermit card. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Eight of Cups in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy right now. This is new path work. That's you just gave yourself a new homework assignment, didn't you? Because what happens in that moment that you're able to energetically heal something? What happens in that moment that you're not feeling so triggered? What happens in that moment that you're able to like navigate through something and say like, that's not a problem anymore. That used to be an energetic problem for me. I've made energetic peace with it, either tangibly or metaphysically. It allows that whole new opportunity to open up in terms of being able to facilitate something in a different way, because you realize that you're not going to be as reactive in the same way. You realize that there could be a different energetic outcome. So even now, like if a lot of this energy is doing that work, it almost like opens the box on past experiences. And that's why we see that perception comes into play, because almost that moment of saying like, I can navigate something that I feel like it wasn't necessarily navigable before because I'm not as energetically reactive, right? While for masculine and feminine energy right now, this is not energy that's proceeding on that point. This is energy that's seeing the indication that that may one day occur. The moment that you see something held with that sense of conscientiousness, care, that feels like the expression of true alignment, like that mindfulness of someone who knows you well enough that not only do they hold, like these energies in coming into divine union are recognizing that feeling of energetic intuition in the other, which is like the most beautiful moment, which is almost that moment of saying, not only do I trust someone, not only do I trust their judgment, I trust their judgment of what I would prefer. I trust their judgment of what I need. Like that moment of having that sense of saying like, you're not just thinking about yourself, you're thinking about yourself, and I trust the way you think from yourself, but you also have that mindfulness and consideration about how I might energetically think. That is that energy that almost feels like you're building that sense of energetic trust in each other, because it's almost coming through and it's being expressed in that sense of energetic mindfulness, in recognizing someone that holds space, not just for the way that they think and desire, but for what you would effectively think and desire, right? So even there, we see that that is the expression of the energy of compassion coming into play that feels like it's building into an even deeper, intimate connection. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is in separation, a lot of that energy in separation is seeing that similar perspective that is giving indications now of some new invested connections that feel like they're truly aligned. And it's almost that moment, like there may even be a few moments right now that may feel like, I want to say like, what happens when we feel that energetic alignment? It's almost that moment that you sometimes feel like a little startled to a certain extent, right? You may sometimes feel like that, like startled, because it's that moment of being like, oh yeah, I thought that too. I felt like that way too, because these energies are not just encountering each other on the path work, but they've worked through the same lessons to such an extent that they're taking the same energetic notes, right? And that's that moment that, again, it feels very much like that harmony, because it's that moment or experience of not just someone having experienced something energetically difficult, but having the same like answer to the problem coming through with the same like work, if you will, that creates that state or space that feels like that energetic breakthrough. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Hermit card in combination with our Queen of Wands. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with Devil card in its reversal. Beautiful energy today, because what we really see right now is this is a lot of energy. I need to stress, there's a lot of energy right now that's ready to go through the process in separation of energetically healing something, specifically via the new energetic connections that are forming. Via that ability to recognize and identify something and articulate to someone in a way that it feels like something doesn't feel like it's holding you back or holding you in that space that you're feeling like caught or tied by the past. This is why we see a lot of this energy was working through that energetic release process. Feminine, letting go of the energetic bitterness on something, right? Like almost having that moment being like, I could hold that. I don't want to hold that. That's gross. Ugh. Like masculine being like holding on to that regret space and being like, I could hold on to this regret and just like, and masculine being like, why would I do that? That's gross. Ugh. Right? So that ability to do so, right? That ability to say and look towards one another, and almost these energies doing that. Like, what did these energies do? Both of these energies looking at the other being like, wow, I would have expected you to be really like bitter about that. And feminine being like, no, I just had to release that. Like, what good is that going to do? And then feminine looking at masculine being like, I feel like you must have held a lot of regret about that. And masculine being like, I do, but I wanted to serve that energetic purpose. Both of these energies looking and saying, you're committed to, like, that's, you're doing, yeah, you're like, even in the sense of looking and saying to someone something and saying, I would feel like this, and then being like, I do, but I, like, both of the energies saying, yeah, that choice was there for me to hold on to something that was icky and gross and not serving me, and me just saying, ew, why would I hold on to that? Like, that ability of letting that go, like, that is the expansion point or the expression of feeling like, even in that moment of experiencing or articulating something from the past that feels like that breakthrough. Because even in the way you're navigating and like through something, that is almost the expression of the energy that says, like, it doesn't mean that you have to be energetically perfect. But I also see that when you do, you don't let yourself get overcaught in those moments of letting that negativity or that hurdle like prevent you from having that energetic breakthrough. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, the minute something is held, and cherished, the minute that you experience and see that and you feel that to a certain extent, is the moment that feels like it builds that bridge of something that can be healed from the past. For both of these energies right now, for the feminine being able to have that resilience and giving the masculine what they need to navigate through something, not trying to be prescriptive, but almost holding space for it, right? Like even the feminine recognizing the masculine, how that's more of an internal process that needs its time and effort and energy to come forth. For masculine, that ability of seeing the feminine that thinks enough about what occurs to be able to articulate what feels like it is within them to change, something that they have to change within the self versus something that was energetically experienced. Both of these energies being mindful about what they're giving the other to carry to a certain extent. That moment is almost that moment that you give something to someone and then you say, do I even need to give this to you? Is this something that might be able to be healed sometime, right? Like that's that moment that start, like even in the expression of holding something for another, you immediately feel that healing activate. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is in the heart of the divine union frequency, this is a lot of that deeper healing that's occurring. But this is you kind of taking more of that intentional direction towards something, right? This is like moving into the breach. You know what I mean? Like moving into the breach, if you will. And it's not that you're feeling that absolute confidence on the way, but you're constantly doing that work to navigate with one another, recognizing the sense of working through something that's energetically sensitive, but with that care, with that mindfulness, like almost like a heartbeat, and saying like, are we still in alignment here? Are we still in alignment, right? Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now. Queen of Wands in its upright in combination with our Judgment card in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Eight of Swords in its upright. And that's the thing about this right now, because what do we see? The problem with energetic wounds like this is, I'll put it this way, there is what you feel like, and this is a lot of the work that the feminine energy is navigating right now. This is a little bit of different work for masculine and feminine energy. I told you, a lot of the feminine energy right now is navigating through a lot of that work. Like all this work right now for the feminine is coming, bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, on what is within the self to change versus what occurred around the self that had to be experienced. The feminine energy is getting into a little bit of like a chicken and egg thing here in relationality to some of this path work is all I'm seeing here. Because this is the feminine energy that's almost looking at something with that context of saying like there is that impossibility point that you sometimes experience between, you know, I keep getting like action, reaction, action, reaction, action, reaction. Like there's like that's an like that is a it can go on, you know, you can't go back to, like there's only so far you can energetically go, right? But the feminine energy to a certain extent is like pushing that energetic boundary a little bit further, right? They're pushing their own energetic boundary a little bit further. They're trying to get more into the heart of something by moving that boundary line and saying like, I can't do that indefinitely, but I can move that farther enough that I can try to get close enough to what I'm trying to understand in the way that it energetically serves my own self. And by the feminine saying, by the way it energetically serves the own self, that is the feminine energy almost feeling like they're coming into better understanding of the self through doing a lot of that, I want to say, regressive path work, right? While for masculine energy right now, this is intriguing because this is a little bit, that is that same path work to a certain extent, but a little bit more of this coming through right now. I want to say it doesn't feel like going backwards for the masculine right now. It feels more about that feeling of energetically going forwards, right? Because for the masculine, being able to take down those walls, taking down those energetic insecurities, that's that moment of feeling like, again, there may have been that point that some of those walls that the masculine is working on, they may have put up because they thought that that was what the feminine energy desired. Like that was the masculine being like, I thought that's what I was supposed to energetically do. So a lot of that masculine energy is also working on that right now. And that is how these energies are effectively supporting one another as they do that work, right? Because the feminine, more what happens when the feminine keeps going through that and being like, I just had another energetic breakthrough. I just had another energetic breakthrough. I just had another energetic breakthrough. What happens when the masculine's like, tell me about it. Let me understand. Let me know. Like, I want to understand too, right? And this is the masculine energy that's saying, I just had another energetic breakthrough. I'm able to like take down one of these walls. I don't need to navigate. I see that. Oh, that was an insecurity. That was a wall of the ego that went up. I can put that one down. Like these are the energies that through via the trust process and building forward towards one another allows for that moment of healing the self via again, not energies that are relying or depending on the other one to facilitate that type of healing. But the connection to the counterpart aids the work that you're doing within the self in such a degree that it feels like it empowers it. Masculine and feminine energy right now going through that same energetic process wherein we identify for the energy coming into divine union right now. This is a mindfulness moment. This isn't really a moment that we're seeing that you're like pushing through on something, but you're almost being very conscientious. You're being very energetically discerning. You're holding space for one another along the way. You're doing that hard work in identifying and recognizing and understanding one another's vulnerabilities or where those wounds came into being. Because even that ability of seeing that point of understanding, it almost allows for that sense of being able to navigate forward in a way that feels like at some point you might be able to energetically heal it. It's all about how something is being carried. While for masculine and feminine energy right now in separation, these are energies building new energetic bridges in relationality to new energetic connections that are approaching one another with a high degree of mindfulness of their own self and their own experiences. These are not energies that are afraid to talk about the past. These are energies that are very willing to open the past, to discover the past, because they've worked through that moment that it doesn't feel like it is energetically triggering. It's almost creating that state or space of this energy looking at their own past with a sense of profound inquiry, right? Because that's that moment that almost says the solution the solution to navigating forward in the present exists within the past version of self. This is energy that does that self-assessment. They do that probing, all for the sake of wanting to maintain that point of identifying their own limitations, their own weaknesses, their own vulnerabilities, to make sure that the circumstances or the lessons of the past don't feel like they have to like replay themselves in the present energetic connections. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Judgment card in its reversal in combination with our Four of Swords in its upright. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now. There's some of that old Scorpio full moon energy still having a little bit of an effect here. We've got here our moon card. Not surprised to see it. We just hit that new moon energy, right? Because even now, a lot of this path work that we've seen between like the full moon that we just experienced and that new moon energy that we just recently walked into, that is that moment that feels like the productive understanding, going deeper within the self, going into that path work of exploration to be able to find what is viable and important, to be able to facilitate a point that allows for a different possibility, that allows for a different energetic outcome, right? And that ability of doing so, it feels like there's a lot of energetic catharsis coming into play, even in separation. Because what happens when we reconsider the past and we come into a deeper point of understanding? That can often experience that moment. And even here, a lot of this energy, there's some of this energy, I told you, even that chicken and egg thing that we're seeing right now. For a lot of this energy and separation, like what happens in that moment of saying like, I know that I could have been more energetically perfect, but I also recognize that something happened around me, right? That's a lot of that energy that almost says like, I've done everything I can in terms of articulating and knowing that there's always some unknowns in that variable. There always a little bit of that uncertainty in terms of like what I brought forth from how I know I could have done something differently versus what was energetically being experienced. But this energy has made peace with that. They've made peace with that uncertainty. And the minute that we can look back and almost say like that point that we say, I guess I'll never know. That's that moment that we express energetic closure. Because that is that moment that we're even able to articulate the unknown variables of something and just say, I'm not pursuing that. I'm not going after that with a sense of like trying to understand. That's a moment of saying, I guess I'll never know, because that means like I'm moving forward. Like that's the energy. It's like, and so even now we see that energy that like almost articulates and sees one another and says, I've still got questions, but anyway, you know, like that moment, like the lack of prioritization in terms of understanding is the energetic closure, because that is the expression of energy, seeing energy that's like they've created closure for themselves. Like that's beautiful. Masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union. This is getting that sense of understanding from the perspective of experiencing like that energy that's able to, that doesn't create that sense of unknowing, right? This is the energy that feels like they get clarity on the unknown parts in the moment of having energetic understanding in the present. So for a lot of that energy, experiencing something to that degree, feeling that energetic peace, feeling that energetic contentment that comes in the true feeling of security, of safety, of giving someone an energetic wound and having them cherish and navigate it in a way that you would expect and desire and aspire to have it held. That immediately brings forth a lot of clarity in terms of past. It's like, that's almost that moment, like, oh, like a lot of like the past experiences feel like there's a lot more deeper understanding and in recognizing like what was like the full context of something that you were experiencing in the past, because that's that moment that feels like, you're like, oh, I was healing from something and I didn't even recognize exactly how much I needed some healing. Like I couldn't even see like how, like what I was experiencing, because I wasn't in energetic alignment with someone prior to this point, right? Well, for masculine and feminine energy right now, this is navigating forward on those parts of the self, if in the divine, in deep in the heart of the divine union frequency, that feel like those unexplored territories. A lot of this energy, just feeling that safety and security and comfort of counterpart energy that almost allows for that energetic deep dive. But what do we see that this energy is doing? Why is there that patience here? Because this is that work of doing something and recognizing that the ability to navigate forward into a place or space that you don't understand within the self is articulated with how much you can step back from it. Like one's own ability to do so. And then not to let it kind of, like I said, trigger you. Not to let it like build forth in that place that like it's like the difference between opening up something in the self that like creates that like overreaction point versus that moment of being able to open something and say, oh, and then putting it back again. Like that's that moment that feels like the difference between something that feels energetically overwhelming to navigate versus something that you feel has that sense of energetic control, because it's not something that you feel like is overwhelming your experience, having to like face it internally. It's almost that moment that you can look at it and it's not, you can almost look at it with that objectivity to such an extent that it's the amplification of the choice as to whether you feel like it's a choice as to whether you feel you want to like navigate it within the self or not. That is the articulation point as to whether something feels like it is energetically healing versus creating spaces or places that may feel like they're not, that they're harming, right? Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Eight of Cups, excuse me, in its reversal, and our Devil card in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? This is what it's like, shadow work. I mean, it's shadow work, right? Because that's what we talk about with shadow work. We do a little bit, and that way, like, and we make sure, like, that's like, we do a little bit, and then that way you uncover and you recognize that you build that sense of comfortability. It's shadow work. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now. Between the Eight of Cups in its reversal and our Devil card in its reversal, we've got here our King of Cups in its reversal. This is like, and this even now, I need to say a little bit, this is a little bit harder right now. We've seen this over the past couple of days, a little bit more difficult right now for some of the masculine energy. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Because for masculine energy right now, if these are moments that you're like digging back into the past, like you're looking back into past experiences, you're looking back into past examples, you're recognizing and identifying moments or spaces where I'm just seeing that there's a lot of work right now for masculine energy, deep in the heart of the divine union frequency. Looking back at past experiences and feeling a sense of something about your ego having energetically blocked some blessings coming into play sooner rather than later. Like a lot of that can feel very energetically overwhelming to a certain extent, right? Because there's almost that moment, again, I told you, working through that energetic regret space, not letting yourself, like, remember, if you're having those experiences and you're feeling like that, remember, hindsight is 20/20. You cannot fault yourself for seeing something now that you couldn't see in the past. You can't do it. It's faulty. It's faulty, right? That ability to do so is that energetic blessing moment, because that's that moment that you're feeling that ability coming forth within you. And that's that like point that like, I feel like a lot of the masculine energy, that's a lot of emotionality. Like when you take down those what happens when you take down those places and spaces that the ego built up? It's like opening a floodgate. Right? It's like, yeah, it's like there's a dam there. The ego's been like holding back a dam, right? It's like sitting there like that. And so we see even now, like for a lot of the masculine energy, could be a lot of emotional overwhelm in those spaces, right? It may feel like a lot of that like release right now for a lot of the masculine, but in a healthy way, right? Like what happens in those moments that we allow ourselves to feel the expansion of what we emotionally feel, and then we're still on the other side of it. Like nothing has happened beyond the expression of the emotionality, but not in a way, I'm seeing here, not in a way that we utilize the feeling of the emotionality like a weapon, not something that pushes us, like that isolates us, but just something that we allow kind of like pour out of us to a certain extent. That can feel very cathartic and very energetically cleansing to a certain extent. While for feminine energy, working through that same frequency right now. For a lot of the feminine energy, this is a lot of the feminine energy coming into some deep healing, like feeling that weight or that frustration of potentially a lot of those wounds being created by masculine energy that wasn't in touch with their own emotional side. Right? This is why the feminine is always in that moment of conscientiousness and fear, because a lot of that feminine energy working through that moment of holding empathy for the fact that when masculine is like blocking their own energetic, like their own emotional frequency, it can pour out. Like what happens when you block, you ever take a faucet, you ever take like a hose and you stick your hand on the hose? Like what happens when you stick your hand on the hose? You don't know what's going to happen. It could shoot out anywhere. Like it could go and this is the feminine energy experiencing that moment of saying, like, almost that point of feeling like a lot of those wounds in the past, holding empathy for the energy that may have caused it, because it's almost that moment of being like they can't even see the fact that they're harming others because they're not letting themselves feel what they're supposed to feel. Like that moment of holding back, like trying to like have that point of strength. Like that's that moment that the strength is not a moment of strength. It actually shows a vulnerability or a weakness, because that's that moment that the unpredictability of something or someone becomes that moment of not being, of a lot of that energetic wound effectively forming around or within the feminine. So feminine understanding that very complicated facet of something is also how the feminine is releasing a lot of that energetic bitterness. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, coming into divine union, the moment that you see someone doing that path work, right? The moment feminine sees and says, like, I'm going to be energetically mindful of how masculine needs to like navigate their emotions, because sometimes they can be that moment of feeling energetically fearful that if they start expressing something, they're not going to be able to stop. Right? This is the feminine being mindful of that energetically and saying, I recognize that if the masculine holds back at times, it's because there is that anxiety or fear that once they start emotionally, they might not be able to stop. And then the masculine recognizing and identifying the feminine and saying, this is a feminine energy that has experienced moments of masculine that was not able to hold them in the way that weren't in alignment with their own emotions. And this is a feminine that came to doubt themselves and question their own selves because of a masculine that didn't have the strength or power to support the feminine. Both of these energies almost seeing the wounds of the other with a clarity that the other might not even be able to fully grasp and see. And what are these energies doing right now? They are helping one another. They're being present for each other. They're not facilitating that energetic healing on the other. They're saying, at your time, at your discretion, know that I am energetically here, right? Because that is the difference between wanting to like change someone to like wanting to like force energetic healing on someone for the sake of one's own needs and desires versus coming to that space of saying, I see that you're carrying something heavy. I see that you're carrying something heavy, and I would love to take that weight off of you, but at your discretion, when you're ready. I won't force you to, but know that I'm here. Masculine and feminine energy right now, building new energetic connections if in separation, built on the fact of recognizing and identifying a lot of this mutual coursework. And we see even now, it's not that these energies are doing the same exact thing. They're different energy signatures for a reason. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Feminine coming into that point of energetic resilience, right? That boundary that becomes a standard. Masculine coming into that moment of recognizing and feeling the weight of the emotional, feeling the emotionality, and then recognizing the feeling of being safe to feel one's own emotions. Both of these energies right now, doing that work and building those energetic bridges as they encounter each other on the way. And neither one feeling like they're energetically perfect in that. A lot of lessons coming towards them that led to these experiences that help build into that state or space. But both of these energies effectively, again, almost seeing one another and saying, I understand the journey that you're experiencing. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Devil card in its reversal in combination with our Eight of Swords. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Death card in its reversal. I mean, this is, and this is the thing about this right now. Even for the energy and separation, I need to stress this. There is a slowness. There is a slowness that is occurring right now in relationality to circumstances and situations, because what we're effectively seeing to a certain extent, this energy is not rushing forward in this way. A lot of this energy feels like they've learned energetic lessons about moving too quickly towards something, right? A lot of this energy navigating and saying, like I told you, a lot of this energy feeling that sense of excitement and being like, not trying, like almost like not trying to get too energetically excited to a certain degree. Like again, like taking that, because this is what is the amplification of the mindfulness of a lot of that healing journey, because this is that moment of feeling something that feels like it's going. What happens when we feel like something is moving in the right direction? We can get a little bit more conscientious about it. We can get a little more cautious. We can be a little bit more discerning, right? That's that moment of not wanting to feel like we're like accidentally like energetically spoiling something with our own sense of eagerness, right? Taking those like cautious like steps, if you will, is almost like what is like helping mitigate a little bit of that eagerness right now, because these energies are almost approaching each other in very similar ways. A lot of alignment potentially happening for some energy and separation right now. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, a lot of this work right now is immediately healing in the moment that you feel that someone is holding something for you in a way that someone else couldn't. If these are energies that are coming into divine union and they're expressing their insecurities to one another, they're not reacting to them. If they're coming to that place of articulating upon them, and then someone is able to hold space for them, that's a moment that you're like basically giving someone, be like, can you hold this wound that someone else created in me? And then being like, absolutely. And they're like, can you please make sure not to touch it this way? Because it's like, when you touch it like that, I don't know what's going to happen. They go, yeah. And that's the moment you're like, why am I carrying that? Like, why am I carrying that? It doesn't feel like it's necessary to carry, because that's that moment that immediately, the mindfulness is immediately the expression of the energetic healing that starts to change your own perspective as to whether that is a wound that you need to carry in the first place. Right? And it can be a little triggering experiencing that, because you're like, I didn't even realize I was healing from that. I didn't even realize I just saw something here that I need to heal that I didn't even see I was carrying. Like that's that moment that just feels like a little bit of like a kind of moment, because you're like, I thought I was done healing, and then I met a counterpart energy, and now I realize that there's some stuff I have to heal from that I didn't even see I was carrying, right? While for masculine and feminine energy right now, deep in the heart of the divine union, this is the energy that keeps on saying, you're encountering these moments within the self, and you're saying, with the right energy, like everything is possible, right? And so these moments, the difference here has to do with a lot of the energy navigating these spaces and places within the self that they feel these limitation points. And this takes a little bit of energetic introspection. Right? This takes a little bit of energetic introspection, because this is that moment that we see that almost raises that internal question within the self of saying, is it like, if I'm trying to find if I'm trying to move towards my highest version of self, and I hit a hurdle, I hit a limitation, I hit a boundary within the self, is that something that is an insecurity? Is that something that is preventing me from becoming my highest version of self? Or is that a standard? Is that a boundary I need to set as a standard? Is that something there that I'm trying to hold on to because it's valuable and it's helping me stay in alignment with who and what I aspire to be, right? A lot of that work happening right now, and it takes a lot of energetic introspection to a certain extent, right? Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Eight of Swords in combination with our Moon card. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Six of Wands in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy right now. That's why we even see, I told you, that's why this work that is slow, right? That is why this work, even now, we see that work is something that it takes a lot of internal navigation. It takes a lot of internal unpacking. It takes a lot of internal exploration, because that ability of navigating within oneself, it requires a clarity of understanding to a certain degree that can feel very difficult, right? Because it's almost it's like trying to see the parts of yourself that are hard to energetically see, right? And a lot of this energy, I told you even now, there's a little bit of that wait and see approach is occurring around these things right now, because we see even now that a lot of these areas, a lot of this navigating for a lot of energy in the heart of the divine union frequency. This is, I told you, a lot of that work in relationality to having that sense of it feeling like it is, and I'll put it this way, feeling like it is energetically positive as opposed to something that feels like it's energetically negative. You know what I mean? I see that even here. For a lot of the energy working through this stuff, this is a lot of the energy right now. This is some a lot of energy, unpacking experiences from the past that felt like they were you were potentially blocking yourself, hurdles, a lot of experiences of navigating those spaces and places in the past that you maybe have been carrying that deeper, and this is it. This is why this type of work is so difficult. And this is why it's so important to really have that sense of understanding of yourself as you navigate forward deeper into the heart of the divine union frequency. Because we see even now, a lot of this energy is unpacking what they've been carrying within versus what was something that they've been holding for someone else. And I see even now a lot of that energy navigating through those moments of grief, of doubt, of shame, of internalized fear, a lot of that work occurring to a certain extent, and that ability to unpack it. That's why we see even now a lot of that work, feeling that strength of self and purpose that allows you to go into that moment of deep integration of the self that requires a deep understanding of who you energetically are in the process of unpacking that within the self. Because that's that moment of not letting yourself feel like you're getting lost or confused in your own shadows. Just being no, I know energetically who I am. I know energetically where I exist. And that ability to do so is almost you're shining your own light into yourself in those moments, because you're recognizing that you are the person that puts that sense of understanding towards those spaces and places that help you build into that point of clarity. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, that modality or that ability to do so, that sense of someone being able to hold space for those parts of the self that you feel like you are still more energetically confused upon. Those places or hurdles where you may have experienced those wounds that are hard to look at. That type of moment. And what is this energy saying right now? Those moments of being I know you might feel insecure about that. I know you may feel embarrassed about that. But I got to tell you, I don't think that there's anything there that feels like it is energetically shameful. It feels like it's almost you've got you've got these parts of yourself that are there and they're just hidden from the world. But what is this energy almost saying? Those places that you find are your weaknesses, I feel like they're making you even more beautiful. I find that they're making you even more intriguing, right? There's almost that moment of, again, what are these energies doing in those places or spaces that someone feels those doubts, those insecurities and fears? Are they pushing forward? No. They're saying, it's fine. I'm just going to build a garden around this. I'm just going to build a garden around this. I'm going to show you that this is not something to feel that sense of, because everything about you is energetically beautiful. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is in separation, this is a lot of energy that's finding one another at this moment that, like, again, it feels like a little bit of that like low moment, right? A lot of this energy having gone through that eclipse process, feeling like they kind of like went through the ringer to a certain extent. Right? A lot of that breakthrough energy. And it's almost that moment of like, this is almost like meeting new energy and being like, wow, you've been through a lot. And like, what is that energy saying to one another as they encounter each other? I feel like I had no choice. Like, what is that energy? Like, that's the energy that feels like the expression of healing, because someone's been like, you've been through a lot. And someone being like, yeah, I didn't really have a say in the matter. Like, because that's that. But it's also that expression, I need to articulate this, which is that moment of saying like, you are someone who's navigated difficult things, and your own desire, your own determination has helped you kind of continue to move forward on that pathwork and not let yourself kind of like, get lost upon the journey. Like, that's what we see, that a lot of that new energetic connection that is happening right now is building forth in terms of being able to, like, these are energies that are almost navigating the hard part first, because it's almost that equivalent of feeling like you're already encountering and experiencing and continuing forward on that energetic heal. Like, it's almost like meeting someone being like, I feel like I've met you. Like, I thought this was the worst time, but maybe this is the best time. Like, you know what I mean? It's really like that to a certain degree. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our King of Cups in its reversal in combination with our Death card in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Six of Cups. This is beautiful, because we just see that there's a lot of energy right now in separation that's building forth into new positive energetic connections. I don't care if they're romantic. I don't care if they're just friendships. This is saying to me that this is a lot of that feeling of energetic support that's coming through right now for a lot of the energy in separation. And it feels like there's a lot of that feeling of like something that feels like very much in alignment right now. Like a lot of that energy, like what happens, and this is what occurs, what happens when we're willing to come into that space or place of energetically releasing what doesn't serve us. It requires us to be able to feel like that sense of identifying and releasing what feels like it doesn't energetically serve us, to be able to come into alignment with what feels like it does. And we see even now for a lot of the energy in separation, it's not that that process is easy. It's very energetically difficult. But even now we see that a lot of this energy in separation, that ability to, I want to say, put that, like navigate forward and also like challenge yourself in the process. Like see what these energies are doing. Feminine is not letting themselves change for the sake of the masculine energy that they're encountering. Feminine is staying very firmly in their own sense of self. That is the feminine energy that's looking and saying, I'm doing this to heal the energetic connections. I need to stay very energetically firm in terms of identifying who I am and what I am. And that allows the masculine to be in a space of the masculine. And that's the feminine even saying, if that sends a masculine away, if me standing in my energetic sense of self sends the masculine energy moving in the other direction, so be it. That's a good thing. That's a moment of seeing that something wasn't in energetic alignment. It doesn't feel like a failure point. It feels like a moment of alignment. For masculine, if this is masculine, it says, if I am vulnerable and open to feminine, I need to be vulnerable and open to feminine. And that ability of the feminine that is welcoming of that, the feminine that was willing to find me there, that is the feminine that is matching my own manifestation goals, that's doing that same work. If that's a masculine, almost saying, if I have to like pretend to be someone I'm not to be able to be in alignment with the feminine, I will always have to be in that modality, These are both of these energies that are doing that work, and they're just doing it in different ways. Masculine is trying to push themselves to be as emotionally authentic as possible towards feminine right now. Feminine is doing everything they can not to become too adaptable towards masculine, and they're feeling the breakthrough in relationality to building towards connections that feel like they are true. They feel like they're viable. They feel like there's true energetic connection that's forming here. Be it even in the friendship or the romantic space. This is like a lot of that sense of doing something for the intentionality of the authenticity of the connection. Masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, that modality or that ability to a certain extent. What happens in the moment that you hold when you reveal something to someone, when they show them that insecurity and they're able to navigate it? They're able to say, that's okay. There's a moment of not having it become a space or place of reactivity, but more that sense of energetic acceptance. It immediately creates that modality that suddenly you feel like that healing is activating because you're experiencing the opposite of what may have created the energetic wound or blockage in the first place. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is in the heart of the divine union frequency, this is potentially addressing those blockages for the sake of healing and repairing a lot of the energetic connections around you. This is that moment of doing so. This is energy that's not even doing it for the sense or the sake of their own self. This is energy that's trying to be very energetically mindful of doing this because they're trying to do something in a way that feels like it is something that they want to see in others around them as well. Right? That's what's really beautiful about that. This is the energy that's almost saying, like, I'm not just doing this for myself. I'm doing this because I want this for everyone else around me as well. Right? Like, that is that moment that almost feels like the gift of this, the work of the self becomes the gift that you give others. It's that moment of saying, the more I'm able to do this, the more that I aid and help those around me in the process. Right? Because that's almost that feeling of like, you know, and especially for masculine, I want to say for a lot of masculine, feeling like you're breaking and you're healing a lot of a lot of energetic cycles of trauma, potentially in the past. Like, this is a lot of the masculine almost saying, I'm doing this work not just for my own self. I'm doing it so that the energy around me also understands that it is safe to be in that modality. It is safe to be in that expression, right? This is that sense of like, this is when we take the personal journey and we start feeling it in like a bigger context. And for feminine, seeing the feminine also healing that to a certain degree, not wanting to facilitate a space or place of creating that, but almost energetically healing it to such a point. That is all, like, these are energies. They're not just doing it with a mindfulness for themselves. The energy deep in the heart, the frequency, is doing it because they're thinking about that wider context of healing something that feels like it was passed down to them, that they're really hoping to improve upon and to correct in their own energetic expression. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Death card in its reversal and our Six of Wands in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with the Queen of Pentacles in its reversal. And this is where we see, like, this is the moment or the modality that feels like it becomes a little bit more difficult for both of these energies. You see here the masculine having that anxiety about feeling their true emotional self. Like that modality of feeling that sense of not being able to energetically express themselves would somehow like be something oppositional to who they are. But almost like saying the masculine, almost saying like, why would something I feel, how could something that I feel take me away from who I am? How could something I feel take me away from who I am? How could something I feel take me away from who I am? What is more myself than what I energetically feel? This is feminine energy that's feeling that own path work of healing that says, I create that energetic stability within myself. I'm holding on to that energetic stability within myself. For the feminine energy, again, that is the feminine energy almost again, looking towards that and saying to themselves, I'm accepting that like my own stability is not something that is negative. It's not something that is inviolable. It's not something that I have to energetically conform to. It's not something that I have to fit into an energetic mold on. This is the feminine energy saying, why is something that I inhabit need to fit into a form? Why does something I have to inhabit fit into a mold, right? Both of these energies doing that path work, and even in that affirmation of asking that energetic question, is allowing for a lot of that energetic breakthrough point. Because what is the feminine energy doing? A lot of the feminine energy is healing by breaking through that energetic mold of conformity that created that state or space of them feeling like they couldn't be their authentic sense of self. Masculine, having that moment and reminding themselves and saying, why would something I energetically feel take me away from myself? Both of these energies coming back into the heart of who they are, but they have to face who they were trying to become in the process. So a lot of that deeper unpacking that's occurring. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, coming into the divine union frequency, experiencing the places and spaces that you may have tried to do that created these wounds in the first place, and being able to heal them energetically together, it's almost like observing and seeing the fact that you're both a work in progress. But what are these energies saying to one another? Even if they're like apologizing, these are energies that are almost like apologizing and saying, like masculine being like, I'm sorry I carry emotions for something that happened in the past. And feminine being like, you can't, why are you going to apologize for something that you energetically feel, right? And this is feminine saying, I'm sorry that I feel energetically insecure because of something that I experienced. And this is masculine looking to feminine, bearing in mind this is not based on gender and what it feels most aligned to, and saying, why would you apologize for being hurt by something that happened to you? Right? Both of these energies almost asking that question, just the asking, either like metaphysically or tangibly, that question that opens the door to that deeper healing occurring. Because that's the moment of saying, I'm healing from something that I'm carrying that is not mine. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is in separation, this is a lot of the energy that's shedding light on the other's experiences to a certain extent by providing that energetic sense of reason. Because what happens in the perception of finding someone that you feel has that ability that you trust the way that they think, you also trust their energetic opinion. When you build that sense and faith of trusting how someone thinks, then it's almost that moment that you start to build that sense of trust in another's opinion. So these energies right now, if they're building forth in a place that they're feeling that alignment in terms of perceiving something from the same way, almost picking up the path work and doing the work together as you go, that's that moment that they're asking the same exact question. If this is masculine, like apologizing to feminine in separation, saying, I still have a lot of feelings like that. Feminine's like, if you're allowing yourself to feel your feelings, but you're not like driving back forth into the past, you're just allowing yourself to experience, like you're letting that be a moment of just like experiencing and feeling that heart opening, then you're already doing the work. And if this is feminine saying like, I know I wasn't energetically perfect. This is the masculine almost saying like, again, looking to the feminine if they're meeting in energetic connections and saying, well, were you not energetically perfect? Or were you not perfect for someone and they were trying to make you what they expected or hoped would be their perfect? Both of these energies, even in separation right now, coming into a deeper sense of their own energetic healing from these connections. Final card for today's spread between our Six of Cups in combination with our Queen of Pentacles. And I have to say, what I love about this is even for the energy and separation, this isn't a moment of these new energetic connections getting you off your healing journey. These aren't side quests. These are energies that are like coming into alignment and proceeding forward on their healing journeys together. One card to clarify these two, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Queen of Swords. Masculine and feminine energy right now that is in separation. This is a lot of that feminine energy right now, building into that sense. And I appreciate this because this is a lot of the feminine energy in separation right now, feeling that sense of like personal resolve coming through. This was that journey of, again, taking something that felt like a boundary and turning it into an energetic standard, right? Even now, this is that feminine energy, even in those moments of building new energetic connections. that are feeling those places and spaces that they're still feeling vulnerable on, becoming those places that feel like they're feeling stronger about, right? Because this is the energetic feeling of building forth into energy that feels like it's in alignment with you, that is sharing on that journey, right? While for masculine energy right now, if these are moments and situations or circumstances wherein you feel like you're energetically healing from, again, that feminine energy from the past, that again, you may even be taking your own, and this is the feminine energy, feeling that scent, like this is the feminine energy in separation, seeing the immediate result and difference of coming from a place or space of like holding the energetic standard, right? Because that's the energy that doesn't feel like they're just kind of coincidentally stumbling upon this. This is the energy that's like really navigating between like what they feel is best for them energetically versus trying to accommodate what they feel is not in alignment with them. And this is the feminine energy almost immediately being able to feel that sense of connection as they even in separation right now, right? While for masculine, the relief or the energetic relief of being in separation and finding that energy of the feminine that is like, I want to say like energetically strong, but I don't mean energetically strong in the sense that the energy of the feminine doesn't feel, but the feminine energy that truly knows themselves, that truly knows what they want, and more importantly, knows what they don't want, is able to articulate and facilitate between those, right? That ability to like identify that. That is also feeling like a masculine that is able to feel that sense of being vulnerable to the feminine, because that is the masculine that again feels that sense that if the feminine, if they bring something forth to the feminine, then that's not a moment of the feminine like trying to conform to match them. That's the feminine energy that's almost like saying to the masculine, I will always be energetically honest with you in relationality to how I feel. I will always say that from my chest. I will never lead you to wonder or question that if I said yes, but I meant no. I said one thing, I meant another. That clarity, a masculine feeling that feminine that's also done that pathwork of resilience. It's the gift that gives back to masculine, because then that's the masculine that feels truly energetically safe with the feminine, because they know that they can energetically trust what the feminine energy is saying to them. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, in divine union, same energetic equivalent happening right now. Same energetic equivalent happening right now. Feminine energy coming into divine union, the minute that you have the masculine energy, hold space, not take something energetically personally, not taking an insecurity personally, not taking it as a personal affront, but almost navigating it with that sense of empathy and understanding. And almost saying to you, I know that you're asking me to hold something, even if you don't think that I would do that. I understand that weakness and confusion that can happen on something that you feel like vulnerable on, because it's almost like you have a wound there. Like that is that moment of the feminine immediately feeling strong enough to be able to energetically release it, because that sense of compassion and understanding articulates the feminine feeling like empowered even in a moment of instability, right? While for the masculine energy coming into divine union right now, seeing a feminine that's always able to articulate, much like I said for the masculine in separation, between their own energetic comfort level and their own strength, almost being able to articulate on it. Almost being able to articulate the difference of saying, like, I recognize that I have a reactionality point to something that I know I don't feel you would do this, but I'm still energetically recovering from. Even a feminine energy that's able to articulate and parse out, again, something within them versus something that they're healing from without. That ability of identifying locationality on an issue or a hurdle. That's a masculine that feels safe with the feminine, because that's a masculine that says, I never have to wonder with you what's going on. If I ask a question, I'll get a quick answer. There won't be that amorphous plane of uncertainty, because even your own emotions, your ability to articulate and expand upon them, makes something energetically easier for me. While for masculine and feminine energy, at the heart of the divine union frequency, this is a lot, I gotta say, this is a lot of healing of like mother and father wounds right now. I'm just gonna say, I told you, a lot of this energy is like going back to the heart of the matter. Like there's a lot of unpacking here, because I told you a lot of this energy has already done the work in healing a lot of those like tertiary wounds. This is like getting to a lot of those sensitive spaces and places. And the only thing about that is, like, when we experience those moments, it can feel, thank you, it can feel a little destabilizing, right? Because these are wounds that you may have been carrying for a long time. But the ability to identify and recognize that with the support of the energetic counterpart. And by support, I don't mean the idea of leaning on someone in order to do something, but feeling like you're doing something energetically together, like you're both doing it in tandem. That ability of doing so creates that sense of energetic empowerment, because again, even in those moments, these aren't energies that are opening up something and they're feeling like they can't close it back up again. This is energy that's doing that in a sense of looking at something and being able to navigate something that may have felt like it was unnavigable before, because of how much you've grown and healed, that allows you to confront what may have felt like it was impossible to confront in the past. Final card for today's spread is Page of Pentacles in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy right now. Excuse me. This will have a little bit of a different impact depending. Okay, I mean, this is the thing. A lot of we're in Taurus season, so there's a lot of focusing on the practicals right now. A lot of energetic focusing on the problem, practicals. The only issue about this right now is a lot of this energy wants to be focusing on the emotional space. It wants to be focusing on a lot of this internal work. But the problem is, like, there's also a lot of this energy that's trying to address just a lot of like the practical concerns or the practical situations that like require, like, almost feel like they divert you from navigating in that way, right? Masculine and feminine energy right now in the heart of the divine union frequency. This potentially has to do with energy that is around you that isn't on the same path work. Right? Like it has a lot to do with that, because it's almost that moment of it's hard for you to express and explain like a lot of that energetic unpacking that you're feeling right now in the space of those around you, right? Because this is like emotional, like this is a lot of like emotional territory, you know? And it's almost that feeling of frustration of even the energy that you want to unpack some things with. It's the fact that like some of that energy, like the energy that caused those wounds in the first place, you can't do that work with them because they're the ones that created that. So it's like in that moment of frustration because you want to heal something with someone that you feel like they wouldn't necessarily be able to energetically understand, right? While for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union frequency, I'm going to say this again. Now is not a time to get all righteous. Now is not a time to get all righteous. Now is not a time to get all holier than thou or start to feel like you're building these, like, if you're coming into divine union and suddenly you're looking around you and everything around you feels like it's much more wrong, I want you to like cool your jets. I want you to slow your roll. I want you to recognize that that is that moment that you may be getting too, you may be like, again, I want to say hindsight is broken, right? You have to look at that and recognize that, because sometimes it can be that moment of looking with that sense of like harshness towards situations that also may feel like it's a bit energetically askew, right? Because you have to remember that your perception on something, while it is viable and valuable, it is one of many different perceptions. We're all going through different journeys in different ways. We can't assume that everybody inhabits the experiences that they live in within ours from the same construct through which you are energetically experiencing something. The universe is magnificent like that. While for masculine and feminine energy that's in separation, this same modality right now, that moment of energetic path work, can sometimes create that state or space of like, I want to say there's a lot of trepidation here for a lot of the energy coming into divine union, like in separation right now. There's a lot of like anxiety. There's a lot of like, I want to say like it's that discernment of walking on eggshells. But even now we see that energy, like I keep on getting that energy saying, please don't misunderstand me. Like, please don't misunderstand me for someone that's not on that journey, because it's almost that moment of recognizing and identifying the fact that like, But I even have to see that energetic discernment and care is the benchmark for someone who is moving forward with a place of energetic authenticity, because it's almost that moment of saying like that anxiety of being misunderstood is like the benchmark of someone who's being authentic in the process. That is our daily collective read for today. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and experiencing it with me. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, you can book one on my website, graystrega.com. My private readings are done over video, and if you are a subscriber to my TikTok, you can take 10% off any of my services when you pay. Just mention your subscriber name at the point of payment. Please keep in mind, if you book a private reading with me, it is a two-step process. You have to book the reading, you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you would like to have that reading. Most importantly, please remember that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never DM you. I will never PM you. I will never slide into your inbox and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my website, so I encourage you to do it there. Also, I wanted to share you guys some news. Just a reminder that our next class for tarot is happening next Wednesday on May 15th at 6 p.m. PST, 9 p.m. Eastern. We are going card by card through all of the cards in the tarot. Our last class was focused on the Fool. This class we will be doing a deep dive into the Magician card. All you need to do to have access to that live class is become a paid subscriber over on my Substack, graystrega.substack.com. Your subscription to my Substack will grant you access to our month live class as well. If you can't make the live class, never fear, because you will also have access to the recordings of that and the previous classes and the course materials. You will also have access to a free one-on-one chat with me and the other students, wherein you can ask any questions that you may have in relation to what we are learning or your own tarot journey. Also, if you become a founding member to my Substack, not only do you get a discount on the full year's classes, but you will also receive a free 1-hour mentorship reading with me, wherein we will review and assess where you are on your own personal tarot journey, and I'll give you insights on how best to utilize the classes and your own personal coursework to the best advantage in terms of going forward. I am so excited to be able to start this journey with you. Huge thank you to everybody who's already become a part of those classes, and I look forward to potentially seeing you there. And even if you don't become a paid subscriber to my Substack, I would encourage you to follow me over there for any insights in relationality to events, new courses, opportunities that we may be having. There's a lot of stuff going on right now, and I want to make sure to keep you guys as up to date as possible. I want to thank you guys again so much for being here today and sharing in these messages, and we will do this again tomorrow.